The memories. Okay.
Like the
Russ, what's going on, man?
So I've got an interesting one today. A few years ago, I covered an NBA event, and it's called the NBA Rookie Photo Shoot. I've probably done 4 or 5 of them. And one of the guys who stood out literally was Bol Bol. He is the son of Manute Bol, but he's kind of the runt of the family because he's only 7'2", where his dad was 7'7". Still, a 7'2" guy, when you're talking to him or he's in front of you, still pretty big.
Sure. I was making
I did see Manute Bol once in my hotel, and he was unbelievable. He walked across the lobby like the whole world just stopped and looked at him because he literally was just that tall. Even Ralph Sampson, I think, because he was 7'4". But Bol Bol's a really good player. Like, here's his numbers: 12.7 points per game, 7.4 rebounds a game, 60% from the field goal range, and 43% from three.
Who's he
43%. He's 7'2".
Who's he playing for?
I think Orlando.
How many? 43% though. Did he shoot very often? Or?
Sorry.
So, did he shoot threes very often, or?
I mean, the fact that he's shooting them at all at 7'2" with 43%.
Well, his dad did. He was to shoot him from 3-point range. I remember.
Yeah, a little bit. You're right. I forgot about that.
Do you guys watch Abbott Elementary at all?
No.
Yeah.
You watch it, right?
I do.
It's very good. It's a very good show, and it's Philadelphia. Very Philadelphia too, which is fun. But the other day we're watching one, and they go to the teacher in her classroom, and she's like, okay, and there's a picture of this tall basketball player on the where behind her, and says, okay, how many yards is Manute Bol? You know, this whole thing about how many yards he would be. Yeah, and then the other time was really funny when they just said they were talking about the witch trials, and he's like, and that's why you never go to Boston. You know, like perfect perfect thing for Philadelphia. Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of basketball, I have to recommend, because I've sort of like not looked for it, but like in flipping through the dials, it just came upon this 4-part documentary series on HBO on Shaquille O'Neal, and I think he produced it. So obviously, it's like it's probably a little slanted in his direction, but it's really good. I mean, he gets everybody. I mean, almost every, obviously not Kobe Bryant, but everybody from Dale Brown as coach at LSU through like Pat Riley and Phil Jackson. He got everybody to participate in this.
Penny Hardaway?
Yeah, Penny Hardaway. Yep. Dennis Scott, everybody from Orlando, like Rick Fox from LA, a lot of the LA players, a lot of guys from Miami, Dwayne Wade. I mean, really, I was impressed that he got as many people as he did.
He's a personable guy. I know people think of him as like big and standoffish or whatever, but like I was at an event where he could have easily ignored the media. Like it was for a video game company, and we were behind the line there, the rope, behind the velvet rope. And he came up to the media and he stayed for about 20, 25 minutes talking to everybody, including me. And I was impressed. I was like, that's when he was at his height too.
And Kev, you hear all these stories about athletes who, after their career, have, frittered away their money and they're on, government assistance or something. And this guy, he's made more money after his NBA career, in Papa John's and vitamin water and all these different things. He takes no salary in some of these deals. He takes a piece of the company. He's brilliant. He's done a fantastic job for himself.
Yeah, I mean, he's financially. I think he's got the first dollar he ever earned. Like, I think he's pretty tight with his money, and he's frugal. I did see some of that too. I've told the story before about covering the NBA playoffs, and the NBA has a lot of interns, and USA Today was a big entity, so they assigned an intern to our newspaper to help us facilitate our interviews. And always this young lady would ask me at the end of the game, she'd say, "Did you get everyone you want? You want it?" And I'd say, "Yeah, of course." And then one day, just for the fun of it, I said, "No, I missed the Shaquille O'Neal scrum." And she immediately said, "Oh, I'll go get him." So she bolts into the dressing room and comes out with Shaquille O'Neal.
Wow.
Now I'm standing in the hallway, me and Shaquille. And, and to be honest with you, I had nothing left to ask the guy. But, I'm a journalist, so I figured it out. And, but it was just amazing because,
that kind of guy, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, he was. The only thing I would say is he was in his mumble mode, and anybody who's ever interviewed him knows what that was. So, he just it's he doesn't do it because he's doesn't want to do the interview. It's just he just kind of has this kind of mumble lower voice.
He does.
And so, and he's up in the clouds and you're down here. So, you got your tape recorder, you got your arm up, but it was hard to understand. But I will never forget my one-on-one interview, and I kind of just wanted to just test whether that that young lady was really going to get me everyone I wanted. And she did. She hauled out Shaquille O'Neal. So
that is something. Oh my God, that's a great story. Wow,
that's a good story.
All right, let's get going here. December 15th. Sure, why not? Oh, Hockey World is Thursday, December 15th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I promise not to follow your private jet on Twitter.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. It's an Elon Musk thing. Don't worry about it.
Kevin Allen. Yep.
I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we have a lot of different things we want to talk about. We talk about the Forbes thing. I wanted to start with my blog briefly because it just is such a really crazy, bizarre stat. And that was today. I was going through, and we know that early in the season here, we've had a lot of interconference games, right? And in general, my way of always looking at who's really good, because we have, you get points for overtime ties, you get points for just showing up, things like that. In the NHL, it's hard to sometimes tell who's really better than other teams, and I always go to the goal differential. The goal differential to me really matters, and you can usually tell, like, the teams with positive goal differentials are in the playoffs. They're either in the playoffs or in the playoff hunt. They're really close. Like, very few teams with positive goal differentials don't seem to make the playoffs. So I was going through that, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. And I started looking at the conferences, and it's absurd. I mean, there's an absurd thing going on. I'm going to read you this. This is like crazy. What do you think the best conference right now? What do you think the best division for goal differential is right now?
For the whole division?
Metropolitan.
The best division for goal differential. As a whole division.
I'm going to say the Metro.
All right.
Yeah, me too.
Well, you would have if you said the Metro, then you don't know what you're talking about, because it's not the Metro at all.
Be nice, Zach.
It's the Atlantic. It's the Atlantic. The Atlantic Division, which is right now at a plus 9 as a division, right? Which, when you go through like these things, because you play so many teams in your own division, which all those teams, of course, will cancel each other out because it's a plus and a minus, and because you play so many teams in your own conference, it's rare that someone that a division gets off to plus 89 as a division. That's like really, it just shows they haven't had many divisional games in one way, and also they're beating up everybody else.
The bizarre thing about the Atlantic, and I just heard this on the radio, and I didn't realize it. I knew that the Buffalo Sabres were the highest scoring team in the league. They're in last place in the division, and they're a plus 12.
They're plus 12, right?
Yeah, so that's the anomaly, because I was thinking the Metro was beating up on other divisions, but they're not, because I knew about Columbus and Philly, obviously.
Let's talk about who's the second then. Who's the second?
The Central.
Yeah, I'll go to the Central sounds right.
You said the Central, Kevin?
I'm going to go Pacific.
All right. Well, none of you guys know what you're talking about. It's not that at all. It's the Metro Division. The Metro Division is the second with plus 20.
That's usually the case.
But and that's normal. Like plus 20, that's a normal type of thing for a division.
I'll tell you what is a normal in that division, and I just wrote about this morning. There's 4 points separating second through sixth in that division. And the top 6 teams in that division all had winning records in the last 10 games, and all 6 of them have a plus goal differential.
Wow.
In that Metro division. So
that's something.
I would say right now they've been the most competitive division just for that reason. So
but the Flyers and Blue Jackets are getting beat up on, so that's why that's
right. Exactly what's happening. Yeah.
There's only one team right now in a playoff position that is negative in terms of goal differential.
In what, the Metro?
No.
You mean in general?
In either the Eastern or Western Conference, there's only one team that is currently in a playoff.
Hold that thought for a second. We're going to go through these other 2 divisions real quick. That plays into this. Okay, so I'm not going to make you guess anymore, because the next one. No, you're welcome. The next one is the Central. Okay, the Central is usually, I would say, I always put the Central and the Metro as the two like best divisions in hockey. That's what the last several years I think they've gone back and forth as being that. Well, the Central is a -41 as a division, and the Pacific is a -68. All right, so consider that for a second. What's going on in the Western Conference? Like, why are the Western Conference teams just getting destroyed by the Eastern Conference teams?
I know this for a fact because they just played Toronto. Anaheim they're -60. So they counter almost everything. You know, they're like the lead weight that is put around the dead body that the mob had thrown into the river.
It's also that they don't play any defense. There's no teams that play any real defense.
Even if you took them out, Mike, that division would still be almost -30.
Yeah, but they're -6. I mean, you get my point. They're -6.
No, but in the Pacific, you're talking about maybe a couple of teams that play defense. The rest of them are all offensive-minded teams with no defense.
But -68 this early in the season for an entire division, or like even -41 for the Central Division, those are crazy statistics. Like I look back on it, and you just don't see that. Like that's not something that happens. And this drastic separation between the Eastern Conference.
Well, I mean, again, I think it's part of the cap not going up, teams not being in position to change things very much. All of those things have caught up with teams, and there's not much you can do. Like there may be one or two that are actually tanking, but a lot of them are just bad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're just bad.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, that makes it worse. They're not tanking and they're bad.
They're not tanking. Right. Now the crazy statistic about this, because if you look through all the teams in the West are losing, they all have losing records to the Eastern Conference for the most part. You know, with the exception of one team that has not beaten any team in the West, but only beaten teams in the East, which is out West, and that would be Arizona. Just figure this out. So I don't get it.
They've been beating everybody. It is weird.
Beating Eastern Conference teams only, and losing to Western Conference teams. So there's just kind of a crazy stat.
Maybe it's the gym locker room that they have for the opposing team. Maybe it's that.
I guess coming all the way from the East and then into that locker room. I don't know what it is, but
maybe it's their fans threatening to beat the crap out of the other fans that come into the building. I mean, that's a thing.
So then we'll get to Mike's thing. But the question I want to do is this: like, Kevin, is the West just worse than the East by a lot?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Mike's comment about Anaheim. You know, they have more bad teams in the West.
Yeah,
you know, that's the bottom line. So
yeah,
you know, and teams that are underachieving. Although you say that, and then we've had surprises too, like Seattle. So, you know.
But it's obvious that the record, and I didn't have time to do the whole record, but it was staggering. Like the record against the Eastern Conference for Western Conference teams is just brutal, and you know, more so than ever before. And you know I always check on that on this time of year. You know, so what does that mean? Why can't Western Conference teams beat Eastern Conference teams? What's happening there?
Eastern Conference teams have better defense. They play a mixture of tough and speed, and not every team in the West can do that.
The team
is this a McDavid factor? Like, is in the West just going?
No, because there are teams in the West that play an Eastern Conference style. Dallas does, Vegas does. I think Winnipeg to an extent does. They have the goaltending. Mm-hmm. I think there are more teams, but you know there are teams in the West right now. I mean, Edmonton is a freewheeling team, although I think that's more the fact that they just can't. They just don't seem to grasp a defensive style. They got McDavid and Draisaitl, and they put in fifth gear, and that's how they win games. And that's going to be their downfall when they come to the playoffs. Colorado's had a boatload of injuries. We know that they can play a winning style of hockey, but they have to get all their players back. Right. Calgary's sort of resetting after what happened last year. So there are teams in the West that can improve and will improve with injuries and with maybe an acquisition here or there. But right now, the East 1 through 8, I think, is more complete.
I mean, I'll just throw out one since you mentioned Calgary. The one surprising stat I found last night while I was watching the game, I decided to look it up when Calgary was playing Vancouver, and that is they're 22nd in the league in the power play. They went 1 for 4 yesterday. Like, there's so many guys on Calgary. Yeah. It's almost impossible to be 22nd in the league with all that talent on the power play.
By the way, how's Mangiapane doing?
7 goals. He scored.
Rough year, man. He's having a rough year, and I don't. It's bizarre because like it is crazy. I mean, there's an example of a guy who, like, obviously when he was on the second line and not getting defensive coverage against him was better, like just like a lot better. But he's obviously getting where people are paying attention this year, so he has to fight through that, and he has to get otherwise he's not going to get to that next level at all. So, Mike, what was the team you were saying about the statistic?
The team that is currently minus 12 in goal differential and is in third place in the Pacific is the LA Kings. They're the only team with a negative goal differential that are in a playoff spot right now. And they're only in a playoff spot by 3 points. They're 3 points ahead of Colorado for the second wild card.
Well, because the top 3 teams make it, right?
But in the top, right. If the season ended,
they're bad defensively too.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think they have good defensemen. I just don't think they're playing good defensively, and they're not getting great goaltending because Peterson got sent to Ontario. And right now, Phoenix Copley is the backup for Jonathan Quick. And Jonathan Quick is not having as good a year as he did last year. So, I mean, it's a number of – I think them getting Peterson back and getting his head on straight because I think he's a good goaltender. That's going to be the big thing. But they have – Russ, they have Doughty. They have Mikey Anderson. They have Edler as a veteran defenseman. Brant Clark is going to the World Juniors. But they Matt Roy, they have bodies. They have good.
Lardy's doing well, but the thing is, still, some guys aren't doing as well yet. Like Byfield's incrementally good. Like when he's down the AHL, he's great. When he comes up, he's okay.
Yeah.
They and look, Kopitar's lost a step, but he's still an effective player. But he's not the same player. Like they have a mix, and the mix last year just worked really well. But now the mix this year looks like they need help. If they're going to actually make the playoffs, they're going to need help.
Yeah. There's no question about it.
Before we switch subjects, can I just do something totally random? Does anyone else on their televisions have these Christmas facts that run across the bottom? And I never, I try not to pay attention, but I get sucked in. I'm trying to do something. And he says facts, and there was just 3 in a row that caught my attention. And since there's sort of trivia involved, I got to go to the panel. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So. The first one was, any idea, you guys, when Christmas became a national holiday in the United States?
I'd say
I know a little bit about this. Go ahead.
I'd say just before the war, just before World War II.
I don't care.
No, they did. Well, yeah,
I just don't care.
For the rest of Hanukkah. But no, I do know that Christmas is very. It was late. It was late, and because it was actually popularized by the Christmas Carol book, which is actually what made Christmas into something bigger than it was before. It was a holiday before, but the Christmas Carol actually turned it into like a celebratory thing.
Give us a guess, please. Give us a guess.
Early 1908.
Okay, that's not a bad guess. It was actually 1870, which I was surprised it was that early.
That's surprising. Surprises me.
Yeah. And the second fact is why people eat mincemeat pie on Christmas.
Well, that's an English.
It's an English thing.
It is an English tradition for sure, but why originally did people eat it?
Because they had too many mice in their house.
So, too many mice?
Mice aren't part of mincemeat pie.
I'm kidding.
Well, there's actually, as you know, no meat in mincemeat pie.
Right.
So, yeah.
I don't know.
It supposedly is for good luck, which I've never heard in all these years. So
I was in Lancaster County last year, and Lancaster County is incredibly Christmassy. It's just like beautiful out there. It's and there's a good pull over
Amish country for people.
Amish country, right? So it's got that. Germany is a Christmas. My wife was just in Germany. It does incredible Christmas things over there, which was lost on my Jewish wife. But anyway, so I'm going out to Lancaster, and we get like shoe fly pie, and which is an Amish thing, and also minced meat, which they make there. So I bought some and brought it home, and I almost gagged on the first spoonful of it. It is rough. It's rough. And it also has weird things you just don't expect in something called meat within it. Like it has like raisins and nuts.
Yeah, essentially it reminds me a little bit of it's because it's got apples in it too. Dutch apple pie with
Dutch apple pie has those ingredients,
with more stuff thrown in it. It's everything with the kitchen sink.
It does sound like the kitchen sink of desserts.
Yeah, and then the final one, which was my favorite, is just a fact that the original Charlie Brown Christmas special. They hired children actors to play the speaking parts, but few of them could read, so they had to teach them their lines.
Really?
By just vocal, just working with them to do that. So that's what it said. I don't know if the case
I
was.
love that. Well, that's one of definitely.
That's the only one of those facts that I'm actually interested in. I mean, because
they didn't have to teach Snoopy though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Peanuts.
Well, I went to tell Mark Lazarus, a Chicago athletic writer. I read one of his tweets where he said, folks, if you're Jewish, you can still talk to us about Christmas. Apparently, not so with Russ. Not so.
No. Here's the thing: we, as a kid, being in a primarily non-Jewish neighborhood, there were Jews around. We celebrated Christmas as kids until we were probably 10 years old. And my parents all right, look, we did this so you could, be happy with your friends. And now we go back to Hanukkah. But my whole point is you just don't hear about Hanukkah anywhere. Christmas is so overwhelming that every once in a while I feel like I have to do that just to remind people there are other holidays out there.
Well, I grew up
because it's just even when people are putting there's gifts online, everything's a Christmas gift. Everything.
Happy Kwanzaa.
So that's, I just feel like that.
I was jokingly when I said that she absolutely loves Christmas. And she didn't when one of our we had a couple debates when we were deciding to get married, and one of them was would there be a Christmas tree in our house? Because I grew up decorating our house like crazy, and there's not. We don't have a Christmas tree in our house because that's something that just kind of bothered her. So instead, I have a Christmas tree outside that we decorate.
Okay, I'll ask a stupid question because I'm have Jewish friends, but is there a tree or is there anything for Hanukkah? I know there's
a menorah.
There's a Hanukkah bush, which is really just
that's not a real thing.
Not a real thing. It's like something that was made up.
People did that to compete with Christmas, and there is no competing with Christmas. But no, a menorah is it.
Something very funny about this, and then we'll get off this. But the Hanukkah, I joked about this the other day because the Hanukkah menorah, the story of Hanukkah is basically about how oil lasted longer to keep candles lit, right? So they thought they were out of oil, and they thought it would never go a couple days, but it did, and it managed.
Because it was oil lamps, not like candles like we use now.
Right, the oil lamps. So someone was driving. A friend of mine was driving their car to. They're like, I'm running on empty, but I'm hoping for a Hanukkah miracle to see if my gas will make it to my oil will make it to the gas station. He made it. It's like it's a Hanukkah miracle.
I will tell you this: the same as a Christmas story. We had a horrible menorah at my house. My dad had this. We had the one that we would use, that was handed down from families. That was metal in the kitchen with the candles, and it's fun to light candles. But there was a horrible one that he would put in the window, and it was like a white plastic with orange, bulbs in it, and it was brutal. And one day he asked me, do you want this for your house? And I was like, no.
I'll go you one.
It was like a Christmas story. It was like having a leg lamp.
I'll go you one better, Russ. We used to have the fake Christmas tree with the snow painted all over it. It would make a complete mess, and we stopped doing that after a while. And then we had this ceramic Christmas tree that we would put on in the window in our kitchen. Now the thing was, this ceramic tree had these little blue lights that would go, or not even lights, a little blue clear plastic things, and there was a light inside the tree. But the problem is that they didn't stay in place. So every time somebody took a heavy step in the kitchen, it would knock the damn lights out.
That's perfect.
And my solution was, why don't you just glue them in place? All we're doing, and of course, no, you can't glue them in place. That's a sin. You can't do that.
What is the craziest Allen family Christmas tradition?
What's that?
Allen family Christmas tradition that you think that is the weirdest that people never do, but not everybody does, kind of thing.
Well, and it's not really a tradition, but I find it incredibly ridiculous and odd that, and it has everything to do with how my everyone but me lives their life in terms of eating. But the holiday family tradition is we always, how people talk around, someone's got to make this and got to make that. There's always a discussion about who's going to make the kale Brussels sprout salad for the holiday. And how that became an Allen Christmas tradition is beyond me.
Hey,
yeah. Let me bring. And now I'm going to do. Then we'll go back to hockey. I love talking about Christmas for a second because we need a break. Mike, what's yours? What's you have? Is there an Ogello family Christmas tradition that's just crazy and weird?
No, just way too much food. I mean, the typical Italian. Of course, the Italian thing has got to get mixed in. We make a ham like everybody. People either make a ham or they make turkey.
No, the 7 fishes.
That's Christmas Eve.
Oh, okay.
That's Christmas Eve. But of course we have to, we have to mix in friggin' lasagna. It's like, I mean, I don't get it. Like, and I my mom is 91 years old, and I said, okay, it's a lot of work to do a lasagna, and I don't know how to do it. So why don't we just make like stuffed shells, which are basically like lasagna. It's the ricotta cheese and it's
lasagna.
Well, I'm sorry. It's like, she can't do it, so we're not doing it. I don't care.
But man, you made me want lasagna like so badly all of a sudden. I don't know what. Anyway, yeah, so that sounds awesome. I like, so ours is crazy. Ours is, as you could imagine. So ours is, there's around the corner from our house, there's a person who sets up, for some reason, a homemade light up hippopotamus. Okay, that it has like a Santa Claus hat on, and it was made years ago. And so about 6 years ago, we had a watermelon here in the house, like that no one had opened up for too long of a time. We're like, I don't think we should eat that watermelon anymore. Someone should have eaten that. So I said, I know what we'll do. So we all marched holding candles to the hippopotamus and presented this watermelon to the hippopotamus as an offering. And we had a really good year as a family. Things went really well. So this became a tradition that each year we go and present. And this family has no idea that we do that. They must be so confused because we leave this big watermelon in front of their hippopotamus with a note on it saying, please bring a good year next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Hippopotamus. And then we sing a little song. We do it like, really like, no, they've never seen us do it. It's really funny. So the year before the pandemic, we didn't do it. And, so I'm like, something bad's going to happen here. Something bad, because it was, remember the pandemic hit in like January, February, March. I'm like, something bad's going to happen. We did not make an offering to hippopotamus. We kept wanting to. We just never did.
So you're to blame. All right.
So since then, we do it all the time. I got the watermelon over there. It's going this Saturday night. We're taking the walk. And since then, we just continue to make this offering to hippopotamus. So that's our.
Wow. Well, now what are you going to do when the hippopotamus disappears?
I don't even know. Like, I think I think that would prove the end days. I think
it'll be like Lindbergh baby disappearing.
Just wildly spend any savings we have left and just think, realize that that's it. We're done. Everything's over.
Wow.
So yeah, the hippopotamus is responsible.
One final thing we got to go. I just saw another fact. You'll love this. 12 days of Christmas. If you got every gift in the 12 days of Christmas, how many would you get for the math people? 364.
Wow.
I know. My son just did this as a funny video the other day. I know that you get 184 birds.
Oh, okay. Well,
184 birds there.
364 gifts if you got everything in.
Who wants 364 gifts for 184 birds to take care of?
Not me.
Kev, I know you wrote about this, but I think we have to discuss it. The Ryan Reeves hit on Roenick last night. I saw the replay of it. And when I first saw it, I thought completely legal. And that's the thing. At regular speed, it looked completely legal. He freight trained him, but it looked legal. And then I saw the slow down replay, and it does look like the principal point of contact is like upper chest and chin, and that's illegal. But it doesn't sound like he's going to get suspended.
No, I mean the reason why he's not, and at least it's been explained to me, is that and if you look at the quote, like Reeves obviously knows the rules because he said right after the game to Mike Russo of the Athletic, we had eye contact.
Right.
He said Aronik saw me. He said he looked right in my eyes, and but he turned away. He looked elsewhere, and then after the game, Lalone, which I thought sort of hurt the chances of suspension, confirmed that Hronik, first of all, would like to do that play over again because he thought there was a delayed penalty.
Right.
So he looked away. He was looking to see who was behind him because he was going to make a play.
Yeah.
And so he basically put himself in a vulnerable position, and that was sort of the impetus for no hearing, which is, he saw where the player was. He knew he was directly in front of him, and yet he put himself anyway. And then when he turned back, because he was facing away when we're just before the hit happens, and then he turns back, and then he takes the full force, in the chest and head area. So, but it was interesting because it's really I saw someone's headline was Twitter divided down the middle on Aronik hit, and I think that's exactly what it was. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, Darren McCarty, who everyone knows is an icon in Detroit for what happened with Claude Lemieux, and of course played a very physical game. He said immediately it was a clean hit. He said, in my era, that was a clean hit, and he basically,
no doubt,
he spelled out exactly what ended up being the case the next day, which is Aronik made himself vulnerable. He said, you can't, play the game to say, I'm going to put myself in a vulnerable position. So if you hit me, you're going to pay a price, so.
No, but you know what it is? All right. So, but Ryan Reeves is looking for a guy that's in a vulnerable position to hit him. That's the only thing. Not every hockey player is doing that. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then it just comes down to timing. And, that's the problem with all these things. I mean, you put all the rules in the world in, but it still comes down to subjective. You got to decide, what his intention was. And Lalone said afterward he didn't think Ryan Reeves was trying to hurt him. I'm less sure about that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it was a complicated call. The good news is it sounds like he'll be okay. Although, as we all know, concussions are challenging to diagnose and to figure out. Sometimes symptoms are delayed. So we may not know for a couple of days. But he wanted to come back in. He was prevented from coming back in the game.
All right, well, that's good at least. At least they prevented him.
No, that's right. That's right. So, but that whole concussion issue that gets back to what we've talked about many times on this, and I always report this out. The biggest problem that you have, one of the biggest problems you have in getting concussions out of the game, are the players themselves,
right?
Because they fight. They fight you on this. I mean, I remember, and I'll bring it up again because this is a very smart player. Sidney Crosby once. When was yanked from a game, whatever what that's called now. What do they call the guy? The observer.
Concussion spotter.
Yeah, spotter. That's right, spotter. Right. Kind of called him out. He went and had a conversation with the doctor, and then the reporters. This was a playoff game. Were probing him on what, and he basically said, "Look, guys, nobody knows more about my body than me. Right. Nobody understands concussions in this league from a player's perspective more than I do. And, I trust me more than I trust a guy who's 150, 200 feet away. This is my body. This is my life. This is my career. You're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. I'm going to make that decision."
Well, then, you know what? And I think there's a place for this. So I think that the Penguins should say, okay, Sidney, come over to the bench and you sign this piece of paper, and now you can't sue us or the league. And then you can go back in.
Yeah. Well, anyway, my only point of
That's
all
the
that
issue.
is it's the players themselves, and the Players Association and the league, they don't want to have their star players taken out for extended period, but sometimes the players themselves are roadblocks. So as Russ just pointed out, I think this is so true. It's a good thing everyone held their ground and said, no, you're not going back in. So,
that's the best thing that could happen out of the whole thing.
Right. I mean, plus it's
the NFL still hasn't gotten it. There's been a few guys staggering around on the field this year.
Well, the Tua thing,
it's scary to see.
The Tua thing was absolutely ridiculous, and
there was one last week.
Oh, was there? I didn't.
There's another one last week, just not as televised, and the guy's staggering and until they get him to the sidelines, and it's just, you don't want to see that as a fan.
We didn't touch on it yet.
That's a quick question about this. So with the technology, I was talking to a buddy about this the other day. He has the technology, where he can take a hockey game, like we were watching it on TV, and then make all the players, basically press a button, and all the players become essentially like blobby stick figures, like no names on them, no helmets or anything like that, but but you can see all the movements of it kind of maps their elbows, their shoulders, their legs, and everything like that, right? And you can see them skating around. It looks very realistic. It looks just like a really good, intelligent game or whatever. And he said, why doesn't the NHL run every illegal play through that software and take out the who it is and who's getting hit aspect of it, and then show it to somebody who didn't show it to have their group of people and say, did anyone see what could be considered the illegal hit last night in the morning, or whatever? And I didn't see it. and then show it to those people. And then how would we be determined then when you're taking out who's getting hit and who's doing the hitting? How would that change things?
I don't know if it would change things. Go ahead, Kev. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I saw this morning the broadcaster of the Red Wings put out, he wanted to know whether the outcome would have been different had he hit Crosby or Connor McDavid. So there are people who certainly agree with you, that influences the situation. But, part of the problem is you could take a panel of 10, again, because the rules are still subjective. Like, even with what you're talking about.
Right.
Where we've established the rules, we know what it is. We can, lay it all out, putting yourself in a vulnerable position. But it still comes down to a judgment call. Right. So, you could have still panelists, and even if you didn't know who it was, we're still not going to get 100% agreement. So
here's the thing about this,
one thing before you say that. See, this is my problem with the Ryan Reeves part of this, is that with him saying, I know the rule, it's like, so you want to bend the rule, and you found your moment in the game to bend the rule, but it really didn't matter. What did it do for his team in the game?
Right.
And flip it. And not Ryan Reeves hitting Roenick. What if it's Alex Ovechkin hitting Roenick? Then there's no suspension, and I'll bet you anything, because I've talked about this ad nauseum, that star players get star treatment even when they're doing something that normal players or regular players get suspended on. If Ovechkin does that, and if it's
I've seen him run guys into the boards and not get aborted.
Yeah, and I despise that. I despise that sort of duality when it comes to, the rules should apply equally to, I know they don't. Michael Jordan didn't get called for traveling, but they should. It should be. The rules should apply equally to everybody.
Yeah.
Yep. But what allows that is just the phenomena that I just described, that, no matter what it is. I mean, even, traveling, my son is married to a young lady whose dad is a basketball referee, and he and I have chatted, and it's just amazing on, like something as simple as traveling with the skill level of today's players is complicated. It's not cut and dry. We can all sit and watch these and say, the obvious ones are the obvious ones, but there are others. And, I just marvel still today, and we've all seen this. We're watching this great NFL game, and there's a play, and they're going to go to replay, and guys look at it on replay, and they're slowing it down, and the analyst will simply say, I don't know which way they're going to go on this. Now, it's right there. We're all watching it. But
I will tell you this. I think of all the sports to kind of get exposed, I think baseball has gotten exposed the most. The plays at the bags, especially at first base, really show how umpires used to just kind of use their ears, but now players have gotten so fast you can't do that anymore. And they're getting, last year they got exposed a lot. A lot of calls were overturned.
Yeah, they were, but that's a good thing. So
no, it is a good thing.
But my thing is, I didn't watch the games last night. I didn't see the games. I was picking up my daughter from college, and so I log on to see the news this morning, and I see Ryan Reeves hit. Will it be suspended? And I immediately think to myself, yes, it will be. Because it's Ryan Reeves, right? In your head, and I'm just admitting, where your head goes to, all right, and I'm going to check this out because it's probably dirty. I'm thinking about all this stuff in my head, and not really, it's not fair, but there's no doubt that there's a human nature aspect to this. I'm not going to write that it probably will be, but that's the first place my head goes. Versus if I saw I don't know, some other, Dylan Larkin, will he be suspended? That kind of thing. I just think that. I do think that if you took away who was getting hit and who was hitting, you get a fairer results.
Yeah. Well, the other aspect of that was interesting is that there were two threads of the conversation, determining whether it was legal and illegal. Everybody wanted to debate that. And it was really fascinating because a lot of people that I really respect were on opposite sides on that. Everybody just sees it differently. And then the other one was, the people who said, why didn't someone react? That's, and again, as much as I love the physical play and all that, there's also some logic involved in all this as well. And, we're not 12 years old, which is the phrase I use, all the time. And, so we're going to attack Ryan Reeves, who's a known fighter and with guys who aren't supposed to be fighting and don't know much about it. And, it just seems silly that we haven't gotten out of that yet.
Yeah, so, it is really silly.
Because the Red Wings don't have anybody that is.
Well, it was interesting. I heard some commentary this morning on Toronto radio when they were analyzing this, and they said, well, the reason Lalonde didn't come out more sort of vociferously against Reeves is because he does have a player on his team that does hit like that in Sider. And I'm like, Sider doesn't strike me as somebody who's hitting open ice bombs on people. I mean, he's a hitter.
No,
he's not a borderline guy.
No, not at all. I mean, there are different kinds of hitters, but he is a hitter. But I don't think that had anything to do with it. It's just not. They don't have guys that can get in that arena. Eventually, Reeves was running around after that, and at some point, Sherratt just said, somebody's got to kind of stand up to him. So, he said, might as well be me. And Reeves threw him around, and it was over. And Sherratt had to immediately go to the dressing room, and
yeah.
And here we go. And then the people who, yell old time hockey raise their fist triumphantly, and we move on.
All right, so here's my I wanted to bring up something kind of fun too that you guys might not be familiar with, but if you're a tech person I'm playing around with this as it relates to hockey. Okay, so are you guys familiar with with what is called Chat CPT?
Nope.
Okay, so Chat CPT is automatic is AI, so artificial intelligence to the up team.
That much I knew.
To the craziest degree imaginable. You have to be it's hard to get in. Like you can get on it, but I have a friend who does it, so I've been able to get into it because the site it's just being killed to the point where you can ask it any question at all or any opinion at all. Like you can say, my friend said to it, "What's a good soup to make on a rainy day?" And it gave it threw a recipe out, and this is how you should make it. And then another person said, "I need to write code to do to get something some really really specific code thing." And it wrote the code for it and sent it back in 5 minutes. It's absolutely off the charts crazy. So I asked it a couple questions. So I think it'd be fun to see how it responds, right? Because I said, who is the greatest hockey player of all time?
Bobby Orr.
So what do you think it says?
I don't care what it says. It's Bobby.
I don't even know.
Well, Mike, just play along. I know both against here.
Yeah.
It does. It's very. This is why it's good. Listen to what it says. Okay. It's difficult to say who the best hockey player is of all time. It's a matter of personal opinion and can depend on various factors such as personal bias and individual performance. Some of the most well-known and successful hockey players in history include Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and Bobby Orr. All three players are known for their incredible skill and success on the ice, and many consider them to be among the greatest players in the history of the sport. Ultimately, the decision of who is the best hockey player of all time is up to individual interpretation.
Great answer.
That is the right answer. That's a really good answer. It's a real good answer, actually.
Isn't that pretty interesting? So give me a hockey question. Give me a hockey question that we can ask it right now because I'm in on this.
What's offsides?
Explain offsides in hockey.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. Explain it in soccer, man. That's what I still don't understand. Offsides in hockey.
When the member of the attacking team is in front of the member of the defending team, that's offsides.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that, Mike. In soccer,
there is more to it.
You can make yourself back. You can pull yourself back on sides in ways. There's all different versions. Yes. Explain offsides in hockey. All right, so it's doing
you can be in an offside position and not be offside.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the scene from one of the old Star Trek episodes when the computer is taking over the Enterprise, and they say, "What's the value of pi?" And the computer basically blows up because it's infinite.
Infinite, yeah.
Right.
All right, here we go. In hockey, offsides is a penalty called when a player on the attacking team enters the offensive zone before the puck. The offensive zone is the area of ice where the opposing team's goal is located. In order for a player to be considered onside, they must be behind the puck when it crosses the blue line into the offensive zone. If a player is in front of the puck when it crosses the blue line, they are considered offsides, and a penalty will be called a penalty. That's kind of wrong, right? Offsides is meant to prevent teams from simply passing the puck into the offensive zone without actually advancing the puck themselves. It is intended to keep the game fair and promote continuous action.
I mean, so other than the skate in the air, it does have everything covered, actually.
Pretty close, right?
Yeah, well, that's pretty good.
And give me one more, and we'll go on to talk about the Forbes thing while we do. Like, give me a really hard one. Like,
why have the Toronto Maple Leafs lost in the first round the last 6 years?
Oh, there we go.
What is ineptness?
Because the other team has beaten them. That's why.
Why can't the Maple Leafs win a playoff round? All right, I'll put that in there. Just something.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can go into you guys can talk about the Forbes thing. Go into that while I'm doing this one.
Yeah, I have it here, Russ.
All right, good.
So, not surprisingly, the top 5 teams in terms of franchise value are 5 of the 5 of the 6 original 6 teams. Although, and people quibble about description. The Rangers being number 1 at $2.2 billion. And the interesting thing is here, the amount that the franchise value has increased in a year. The Rangers went up to $200 million to $2.2 billion. The Maple Leafs are at $2 billion. They went up 11%. Montreal at $1.85 billion. They went up 16%. The Chicago Blackhawks at $1.5 billion. They went up 7%. And the Boston Bruins at $1.4 billion went up 8%. So, not surprisingly, the one that's surprising to me, Kev, number 6 was the LA Kings at $1.3 billion. Now, is that the fact just because it's LA?
Yeah, for sure it is. Yeah, and the their marketing opportunities and sponsorship deals there probably speak to that. And it's still a pretty hot ticket in LA. Not like it was when Gretzky was there, but it's still pretty good. And but
they don't own the building. They're a renter from the
right. That whole LA Live thing is massive, Mike. Like Kevin said, that's where the money is.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised at that. I'm surprised that the Red Wings are as low as they are. They're 12?
11, $1.03 billion.
Yeah.
You like this? Who is the best hockey writer in history? By the way, the Toronto Maple Leafs answer. Just going to say this. I'm sorry for interrupting. The Toronto Maple Leafs answers. I'm sorry, but I'm not able to answer that question right now.
Neither can anybody in Toronto.
Yeah.
I think is actually the right answer.
It is the right answer.
Who's the best hockey writer in history? It's difficult to determine the best hockey writer is a matter of personal opinion, so it's talking about the same way. Some well-known and highly regarded hockey writers include Scott Burnside, Al Strachan, and Kevin Allen.
There you go.
These writers are known for their in-depth knowledge of the game and their ability to provide unique insights and analysis. Ultimately, the decision of who the best hockey writer in history is up to individual interpretation. How about that?
Wow.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting that the information of that computer is a little dated, I think.
Al Strachan's been retired for 10 years.
I think Al Strachan is kind of funny. Yeah.
Let me just finish out the top 10, and then I want to talk about the teams at the bottom, because the ones at the bottom.
Well, I have a couple of things to talk about in that.
Edmonton is 7 at $1.27 billion. Philadelphia at $1.25 billion is 8th. Washington $1.2 billion is 9th, and the Seattle Kraken at $1.05 billion is 10th. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so one of the ones that surprised me was the Islanders at 12, because again, Nassau County, I looked it up because it used to be like the second richest county in the United States. It's the third richest, and this is on the border of Queens and Nassau. So the closer you get to New York, the more valuable the land is, and it's a new building.
Yes,
and they're a team that's played well for the last 5 years, except for last year. So that's a little bit surprising that it's not there. More surprising is probably that they beat out the Vancouver Canucks. Like, for them to beat out a Canadian market like Vancouver is a little surprising. Yeah. The only thing I could say is maybe some of these Canadian teams, because a lot of the Canadian teams aren't doing well, and it could be the age of their buildings. I think like MSG may have fell victim to that if they didn't renovate. So I'm wondering if it's the age of the building is kind of like it's lost a lot of value.
Well, it's funny because I'm looking here at like the greatest increase in terms of a 1-year change in value. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they doubled their value. They were a little over $500 million last year. They're now $1 billion, and that's unbelievable. Now,
getting to the cup. I mean, they
well,
get
3 years in a row.
I guess that house that Jeff Vinnick built in Longboat Key, where my in-laws live, is going to be fine. It's such a big giant house that everyone's like, how can he afford such a place? I think he's going to be okay.
I think the biggest aspect of that whole story is how many billion-dollar franchises that we were there. I mean, if you take into account that we were all wowed by what they were charging for expansion teams, what was it, $650? What was that last one?
$750.
$750, right?
Was it $750? Okay. But, and newer franchises are worth more because of all the untapped potential and all that.
Right.
So, the fact that, we now have how many billion-dollar ones? 12? 14. So almost half the league. I mean, that's pretty remarkable that you can get $1 billion for an NHL team when you think about, where we were in the growth of the game. Because, the entire league this year is only going to generate $6 billion. So,
now, okay, not surprisingly, and we won't waste any time on it, the least was the Arizona Coyotes at $450 million. And I said to Russ, the whole reason why, and maybe I'm wrong, I think the whole reason why they're holding that team in Arizona and hoping that things, they get the new building and everything else, if they move that franchise, they can't justify saying we want 750, 800, 850 million for that franchise because it's only worth that in Arizona. It's only worth 450 million. So how can they ask a $400 million markup in terms of a transferring fee or in terms of?
I think for them, they would just do a relocation fee, not a new franchise fee. So I think a relocation fee, you can get away with it.
Now, Kev, 31st is the Florida. I mean, this is the President's Trophy winning Florida Panthers. Okay, we know the building's in Sunrise. It's not in Miami. But this is a strong franchise in terms of the product on the ice. But really, since Vinny Viola bought it, really it hasn't improved in terms of its financial. I mean, I watch games on Tuesday night, and there are still, with the team being a great team, there are still 6,000 fans. There are more empty seats than there are fans on a Tuesday night in Sunrise.
Yeah, no, it's never really worked there. Its location. Before it was the team as well, but they have turned it around. And boy, I don't know what the answer is there because they've once they turned it. I mean, a lot of times you say once you turn the team around, it'll be fine, but they've done that and it hasn't been fine. And that's really got to be frustrating for the league. And to be honest with you. Like, why are you there anyway? Like, you're not close enough to Miami to have that lure. You're not one of the major.
It's a great point. Why did they decide on that area?
Why are we there? I mean, Arizona. The argument beyond the money, and I'm not sure that money is the actual reason. Is you create that corridor of Vegas, Arizona, and the two Southern California, teams that at least are in the same general area. It's a television market, but you can't make any of those. I mean, you got another franchise for Tampa, so you have two in Florida. I guess that's an argument, but so I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that's the one that's kind of bothersome of why we have that. At least you can kind of see where that.
Well, actually, Kev, see, I forget this. Right. In '98, the Panthers played their last game at Miami Arena.
Right. That's where they played in '96 when they're in the Cup final.
I forget that.
By the way, that was a scary place.
I've never been there.
Yeah, I've covered the league a long time, so I remember back when they would make sure they watched over you while you got a cab out of Chicago State.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it was in a rough neighborhood, but
it sounds like it was in Miami though.
Yeah, but Miami was difficult. Like, I charged me 25, parked on the street right there outside the arena to go to a skate there, and the guy came along and he said that'll be $25, and I said, pardon me? And he goes, oh, I watch your car. That's
yeah.
I watch your car.
Listen, they did that to me in Detroit too for an event.
Yeah, so I thought about it for just a second, and I handed him $25. Oh, yeah? I told the security guard about it, and he goes, you made a wise decision.
Okay, so this one is interesting and, of course, close to home. 30th at $610 million is the Buffalo Sabres. And this is there are a number of contributing factors to this. old building.
Yeah, that's a
Bank
fact.
Center is one of the oldest buildings in the NHL. I think it was 97 or 98. So we're talking, 25 years old, going on 30. It's antiquated. Ownership, I think, is an issue here. And, unfortunately, like Terry and Kim Pegula had a health event last year, has not been seen in public since. Terry Pegula has sort of been an absentee owner since that whole thing happened. The franchise has not made the playoffs since 2011. So a product on the ice, management problems, ownership problems, building problems, a lot of things are contributing to the same. And this is a great hockey market, but expect results. And they are better this year. They are growing. They have good players.
Yeah.
The reason that the value of this team is down is because this organization has been badly run and badly managed for over a decade.
Well, it goes back even probably before that, Mike, in some ways. I mean, as far as the business perspective go, I mean, I know that there was a time when revenue sharing just in the new NHL launched and revenue sharing was out there, and people, teams that weren't making as much money were getting money from teams that were. And
well,
the Sabres back then. I mean, this is my story is the Sabres back then. They were selling out, and they had like a waiting list for their tickets, but they were charging less for their tickets than anybody else in the league,
right?
And not making as much revenue. And there were teams that were really upset about that. And they said, well, why are we giving them money? They need to just charge more for their tickets. They're like, when they know obviously.
And now they are, and now there's no people in the building. Now there's 13,000 people in the building.
Obviously, they knew there was a number that area would pay, right? And there was a specific thing.
Well, remember, they went bankrupt. They had an owner who went to jail, John Reeves. Right. They had Tom Golisano, who picked up that team off the financial scrap heap and then flipped it and sold it to Terry Pegula. So there's been a lot of they've had some issues with ownership. They started off good with the Knox family, but it's been like the last 25, and everybody thought, the Pegulas were going to calm things down, but they've really been sort of absentee owners in a sense. And the problems with the ownership has been, they have taken the word of people in the NHL to hire people like Jason Botterill or Tim Murray or Ralph Kruger, and they got burned by the league because those people have been terrible.
Right.
So now they've decided we're going to choose our guy. And Kevin Adams, after I think people have doubted his credentials for the job, I think he's done a pretty decent job. But they're a long way from being successful, and I think that's affected the value of the franchise.
Here's something to mention, Mike. In 2000. The Rangers were still first. The Flyers were second. So I did want to mention I felt like they fell. The Leafs were fifth back then.
Yeah.
Detroit was third. So Kevin's right. It's fallen. Let's see where the
Leafs have improved. Because
the Sabres were 23rd.
Yeah, and now they're 30th. Yeah. And the Leafs' value has improved, obviously, because of the ownership between Bell and Rogers and Larry Tannenbaum. I mean, they have two biggest media companies in Canada as part owners of that team. So
Mike, where do the Ducks fall?
Give me a second. Anaheim is 26.
In 2000, they were 20th. So that was what the Cup did for them, and now it's waned.
Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, I have a couple of things that I asked that I think are kind of fun. All right. So here we go. I real quick. Why am I sad my team lost? Ready?
Oh my God.
Okay. It's natural to feel sad when your team loses, especially if you're a dedicated fan. Losing can be disappointing and can leave you feeling upset or frustrated. It is important to remember that losing is a part of sports and that every team experiences losses at some point. Instead of focusing on the negative feelings, try to think about the positive aspects of the game and the things that your team did well. You can also use the loss as motivation to improve and do better in the future.
Yeah, try and give that answer to Michael Jello. Good luck.
Why is hockey?
Yeah.
Right?
I'd take that computer board against the friggin' wall.
There you go. Why is Mike so mad? I'll ask you that question. Why is hockey important in Canada? Ready? Hockey is an important part of Canadian culture and history. It's one of the country's most popular sports, and many Canadians grew up playing and watching the game. Hockey is also closely tied to Canadian identity and is often seen as a symbol of the country's rugged, outdoorsy spirit. Additionally, hockey plays a significant role in the Canadian economy, and the sport generates millions of dollars in revenue through ticket sales, merchandise, and television contracts. Finally, hockey is important to Canada because it brings people together and provides a sense of community and national pride.
Yeah, outdoorsy, yet these guys are showing up at the rink with aqua blue suits on.
Right.
Game of the night, I think it's safe to say, is Rangers and Leafs at Madison Square Garden.
That's a biggie.
It's going to, the two most valuable franchises for us. Yeah. But Shesterkin against Matt Murray in goal, and the Leafs have, I think, 15 games consecutive that they have earned at least a point. So the Rangers are starting to play better. So that's going to be probably
it's a good litmus test for both.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. I'm going to leave you on this. Why is hockey not as popular as other sports? Ready? Hockey's not as popular as other sports for a variety of reasons. One reason is that it is not as widely available as other sports. Hockey is primarily played in cold weather countries and as a result is not accessible to people in warmer climates. Additionally, hockey can be expensive to play and watch as it requires specialized equipment and can be costly to attend games. Finally, hockey is not as popular as other sports because it is not widely televised. It does not have the same level of media coverage as other sports or basketball.
This is the first bad answer. This one, there was two. The televised part was bad, and the warmer climates, obviously, they've overcome that. So I disagree.
They're getting better. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of fun.
I like it for every other answer, though. Honestly,
honestly, if you know what goes into AI, artificial intelligence, it's pretty crazy. Like I asked who is Eklund, and it says I'm not familiar with that person. But there you have it.
Did that hurt your ego?
No, because I purposely have kept myself from being known by the computers for that, because the one day that the day that the vending machines try to take over the planet, you guys will be in trouble.
We are Devo.
Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We'll talk to you soon. Remember, stay